guys, Tom here. Welcome back to Throw and Wrench's Garage. It is just me today. Declan is still up in Vermont playing with robots with his high school team. So it's just me here today, which has led me to doing a pretty specific job that I don't think Declan would appreciate, and I don't think my patience would allow for with him. Now, one of the things that's been driving me nuts about the Chevelle since I got it is really the dash. Now, when I first got the car, the first winter that I had it, I actually took apart the dash, yanked the entire dash out, replaced the dash pad, replaced the entire dashboard, the whole assembly, painted it green to match the interior of the car. I did a lot of work to this, and I did my best to restore the instrument panel, the gauges as well, but they didn't work out so great. So let me show you what's going on there. So I'm doing my best to try to shed some light inside the car while I work here, but honestly, this is gonna be tough. So this whole video, just be aware, I'm trying, but it isn't gonna be perfect. So this is the dash cluster. Now this car was originally a Malibu. So this dash is aftermarket. This is something that a previous owner added in that is not actually part of the Malibu package. I think technically speaking, you could have actually ordered the round gauge cluster dash with a Malibu, but I don't think it was a very common option that people did. And this is the idiot light version. So the only gauges really are the fuel gauge, the speedometer, and then a clock. The other lights here are idiot lights as opposed to gauges, which I don't really like, right? Because with an idiot light, once that light comes on, you're already in trouble. So I had installed some aftermarket gauges here to give me sort of what I refer to as the hot rodder's holy trinity. This gives me my oil pressure, my voltage, and my temp. And then I added in a small tack up here. This is nothing fancy. I just wanted to be able to track the tack. But I kind of hate it. I hate having these separate. I hate having this separate. This thing moves around on me and causes me trouble and kind of blocks my speedometer. And so I had always planned on upgrading this dash cluster. And the original plan was to just update it with sort of stock dash cluster stuff so that I could upgrade this whole thing. It turns out that was going to be more of a pain in the neck than I was willing to go after, and I'll explain that. The other problem with this is that despite all the time that I took to get this properly installed and refinished, something is wrong with the odometer. Now, I didn't mess with the odometer when I took it out, but it's not been the same since I put it back in. So I don't know whether something fell loose or fell out of alignment, but it doesn't track right, which is a problem. Now, that was only an issue really last year. So it's not like there's a lot of miles on it, but it's an issue for me. I don't like it. And then the clock does not work. Not surprising. Most of the original clocks in these things don't work after a while. You can get replacement kits for them. You can get quartz action replacement kits for them. Honestly, I don't really give a crap about the clock, so it wasn't worth replacing. I was going to replace it with a tack. So now let's talk about this. Now, if I'm being honest, I could have just replaced this dash with a standard dash. You can go onto NPD, OPGI, a bunch of the groups that sell Chevelle parts, and you can go ahead and get yourself some decent instrument clusters. You can either buy them piece by piece, you can buy the whole package, but it's a bit of a pain in the neck, and I had already spent money on this one just to get it restored. I mean, I restored it, but I still had to buy parts and pieces. So that's not really an avenue that I really wanted to go down. It was lacking something, right? So one of the challenges is the speedo. You know, I have different wheels and tires on here than this car would originally had at the factory, so the speedometer has never been accurate. That means your odometer is not accurate either. Now you can fix that, right? I can go ahead and get the new gears to slide inside the transmission and recalibrate that. It's one more thing. So I started looking into other dashes, and I'll show you what we got instead. So this particular beauty is a Dakota Digital Dash. This particular model is a VHX model. And VHX refers to this little control box that comes with it, which takes a lot of the wiring nightmare out of this. I hope, from what I've seen anyway. So it's going to make that a little bit more straightforward and should make this a little bit easier to work through. It comes with this cluster. It also comes with the individual gauge cluster. So the voltage is going to go on the left over the lighter. And then on the right-hand side, we've got temp and oil. The cool part about this that I actually really like is that it does have a digital component, even though this thing looks pretty analog. So this is going to have the ability to be able to do smart calculations for the speedometer. You can calibrate the speedometer based on driving a mile, so you don't have to worry about changing gears and stuff like that in the speedometer gearing that goes into the transmission. You just leave it as it is, hook up a new sensor to it, and you're on your way. It also has the ability for us to be able to set the mileage to a point. So as long as I do it within the first 100 miles of driving the car with the speedometer in it or this cluster in it, I can set the odometer to a specific mileage. So I can set it to what my odometer is reading right now in the Chevelle to try to keep it as accurate as possible. It also has the ability to do things like tracking your fuel. Fuel mileage is always kind of a nice thing to be able to track, and I think I can do that here. And then it also does cool things like doing quarter-mile tracking. So you can set it to track your quarter-mile time because it'll know the distance that you traveled and be able to track that timing, which is also pretty cool, and we'll be taking advantage of that at some point, I am positive. So we're going to try to get this thing installed, and let's talk about that. So you guys know that we already said about the wiring on the Chevelle. We've already got this wiring harness in there, and I actually put in wiring into this harness for a couple things that it now turns out we're not going to use. So there's definitely going to be a couple of these wires that come back off because of the sensor packs that the dash comes with. So the dash comes with a few sensors for oil temperature, oil pressure, and for water temperature that I really can't substitute. I've got to use their sensors. Otherwise, it's not going to work right with this dash, and I could break something. And their sensors have pretty elaborate cables. So their sensors want to snap into these. These are sort of like Deutsch connector cables, weather tight. And then the other end is bare. And these wires then connect into this VHX harness. So that means we're going to have to run some cables through the firewall. There's already a hole there. We might have to make it bigger. Probably have to get another grommet for it, but that's not a big deal. The big deal will be opening up the dash so that we can get this cluster into it and the old cluster out. So that's the first thing we're going to set to. So the first order of business here is going to be taking this dash pad off. Step number one. There are, I think it's 5 or 7, I don't remember the number, Phillips head screws that attach this dash pad to the dash. So we're just going to try to carefully remove all those, then we'll bag them and tag them. Okay, so the screws are out. This thing should be able to lift off pretty easily now. There are some Z-clips if you've never taken this thing off before. There's some clips at the front edge of the dash pad that are going to trap it into the dash. These screws just hold it down on this side. So we're going to give it a lift and then slide back. And we come right off. Let's see if we can get you a good look in here. So this piece is what we're pulling out. So there should be about 7 screws in here that I think are holding this in place. We're going to need to get all of those out. And then I think what we're going to do is we're going to mount that little VHX box right on top of the glove box there. So I think that's where it's going to live. So for now, we're going to see if we can loosen up this dash a little bit. I think we're going to need to. All right, so now that we have the dash pad off, we've got to be able to move this dash off a little bit. Now, the goal here for me is I don't want to remove this entire dash from the car. There's not really a need to, right? We only need to make ourselves a little bit of room. We don't have to take it entirely out. And trust me, taking the entire dash assembly out of this car, massive pain in the butt, because it means you've got to disconnect, basically everything that's connected to it. Remove it, it's a big, big hassle. So what we're gonna do is remove the bolts that we need to get it to come free, but then we got a trick. Now, admittedly, I had to run back out and buy these because even though I had them from my previous engagements with the dash, I must have thrown them away, or I hid them well enough that I can't even find them myself. So I went out and grabbed these 1/4 thread bolts. These are 7-inch long bolts. You can also use all thread if you've got it, but the only all thread I was able to find there is 24 inches long, and that's basically gonna trap me in the car. So the idea of these is we took the first nut, or the first bolt out at the top here, and we did the same thing over here. And now that we've got those bolts in, it's gonna allow us to be able to, once we disconnect all the bolts, slide this dash backwards and let it just hang on those 2 bolts. So it'll just be suspended. So we're gonna do that. I think we're gonna drop the steering wheel down first so that we can get some room here too. So if you find yourself needing to drop the steering wheel down in one of these A-bodies, you can see this little bracket is what's holding the steering wheel up. So we just have to remove those bolts and we can get this bad boy out of there. Now up here, we've got this bracket holding in the speaker. I could go ahead and remove all this stuff, but I think instead what I'm going to try to do is just remove this one forward screw from the bracket so that we can free it up, leave most of it intact, and then just slide this dash back. That's what I'm hoping for. More than a small pain in the neck, but we've got it out. So you can see those 3 bosses at the top there. There's also one kind of buried over there. There's one right here under the lighter, and then there's 2 more under the dash, but that was enough to get it free. So now we'll see what we can do. I see what's going on. There we go. So we were caught up in part on the parking brake release. But I got that handle off and we should be outside now. There we go, speedo cable's off. Much easier that way. There's one grounding wire I'm caught up on. Can I get sight of it? Is the question. All right, she's out. All right, just like that, she's out. So there were a couple other problems with this thing that you maybe can't see very well on video. But this crystal, as much as I cleared it and cleaned it before putting it in last time, what ended up happening was there was some static electricity that was on the back of it. So once this thing got installed, then it got all dusty on the inside. Obviously, you can't get to that, and these are heat melted on, so it was going to be a giant chore to redo it, and it just drove me nuts. So now you can see we've got some room in here to work with finally. We can stretch this back and we can start looking at our wiring. All right, so let's start the process of yanking stuff we don't need. Bring that back through. That's the tack wire. These wires are going to have to be sussed out because I've got them mashed in someplace else. I'm going to make sure what. Now that is a whole lot of wiring goblins that are now gone from the dash. But this is going to go to a good home. The kid down the street from me, Ryan, goes to school with my son, with Declan, but he's a senior, and he's got like a mid-80s G-body, and doesn't have a tack and doesn't have gauges, so I think we may just gift this to him. He's a, young kid who's super interested in his car and gung-ho about it, and doesn't have a ton of cash, so that'll be good for him. Now this is our wiring harness that goes into the old dash, into the old instrument cluster. So now what I've got to do is, some of these wires I'm going to need in order to connect them to our new harness. And so what I need to do now is go and grab my wiring diagram and figure out which wires are which, and then match that up with the wiring diagram I got with the dash, and make sure that I can identify the wires that we need. And then we're going to have to make some splices, because we're going to run those wires all the way over here to where they need to plug into that VHX control module. So that's what I'll be doing next. All right, so here we are, all set. I was able to identify a whole bunch of these just based off of what I have in my wiring schematic for the Chevelle. But there were a few mystery ones, so I managed to consult the Oracle, which is like the old school Chevelle forums, and was able to get some ID on the harness, which is actually pretty cool. The harness has 12 connections to it. Each one of them is numbered. So you can find that someone has gone through the effort of verifying all of these and labeling them according to the number. So I'm able to find out the ID of all of these and get these squared away. So some of these we'll be using and some of them we won't. Like the turn signal ones we'll be using, the brake we'll be using, but oil pressure we're not going to use. Water temp we're not going to use. High beams we will use, right? So we're going to have to check against all of these to see what is needed. So this is our handy dandy VHX. This guy is going to be what we use to plug into, and then this in turn has one big like Cat5 cable that comes out of it and goes straight into the dash. So it's a pretty easy connection from here to the instrument cluster, but we've got to get everything that we need wired up here. So there's a few of these that we're not going to bother with right now, right? So our oil sending, water sending, and our speedo in and out, we're not going to bother with those. Don't have to worry about them. What we do have to worry about though is things like fuel, And the tack warning, AC power, constant power, and ground, we're going to have to make sure that we get those connected. So that's what we work to next. All right. Bunches of wires, wire clippers, my little heat shrink butt connectors. We should be in business here. All right, so we're only making connections that we need to make. Let's leave those guys last. They're big. Do the high beams. So I tried to match up colors as best I could. I've only got so much. So it won't be perfect, but that's okay. All right, so now let's see if I can melt this wire without burning the car down. All right, I think that's good. My limited electrical wiring life has been made much easier by these soldered heat shrink connectors. They make it so much easier to make a butt connection that you can rely on. The crimping ones just kind of stink, in my opinion. It's such a hit or miss thing. Sometimes they work great, sometimes they just don't hold at all. But these things, because you can see that solder melt in there, it's nice because it gets you a nice good connection, and then once the solder cools down, you've actually got a pretty strong connection. And you don't even have to break out a soldering gun, which is always nice. All right, well the phone died, so we're down with the chunky camera now, which makes me hit stuff because I can't see what I'm doing. So I had to enlarge the hole in the firewall, which I think there we go, now we're in focus. That's the hole in the firewall we had. I just had a couple of pieces going in there before, just a couple of thin wires. But now, I've got this mamma jamma going in there. This is a pretty big gauge wire. It does have its own sheath with it, which is nice. This is the connection at the other end that we're going to see going into, I believe this one is for the temperature sensor, and the other one, which looks almost the same but has 3 wires, is for the oil temperature. Oil. I'm getting them mixed up. One of them is oil pressure, one of them is water temperature. I don't remember which one is which now, but we have to get those to go through that hole, so I enlarged it. I am going to run these cables through here for now, just to sort of test our length, but the truth is, I need a grommet for that hole. I'm not going to be comfortable with running these wires through that hole long term without having some sort of a grommet in there to make sure they don't get cut up. And I don't have that right now, so that's going to have to be in the be continued work. So why am I running these cables now if I'm just going to have to run them again? I'm so glad you asked. I'm really just trying to figure out if I have enough cable here. So these are pre-wired cables. I'm obviously not going to mess with this end. This is that sort of Deutsch connector end that's weatherproof, and it's what clicks in and attaches to the sensor itself. Not messing with that. But I can mess with the other end, which is just bare wires. So I want to run these through to see how much of this cable I'm still going to have left coming outside the firewall once I've got it run to the connection box, the control box. Because that'll tell me whether I've got to do some more splicing. I've already got some labels made up for these. All right, that's both of them in there. Let's see what we got for slack. Oh, we're going to be plenty. We got plenty. So these two, one of them is going to come in right around here, and one of them is likely going to come in right around here. So we got plenty of slack because I already have as much as I need inside. So that means we'll be able to, once we run this, sorry. All right, I got plenty of slack. So these two need to run basically into the middle of the engine bay. The oil pressure sensor goes in the back of the manifold, or in the back of the engine block, right behind where the intake manifold ends. And then the water pressure, water temperature sensor, they want that to go in the front of the intake manifold, up near where the thermostat is, because that gives you a cooler reading. If you throw it in where the heads are, which is where my last one was, you're going to get traditionally a hotter reading, which incidentally could be one of the reasons why my old 350 always seemed like it was running hot, is because I was running it into the head, so it was probably reading a little bit warmer than it would have if I had used the intake port. So we'll probably do what they tell me. But for now, we got plenty, so I'm able to reach with slack those connections, and I already have enough cable inside that I can run it up over the dash and to where I want to be able to place this VHX module. So I think we're pretty good. I feel confident with that. I need to take the old sensor for the cable for the speedometer out of here and replace it with a new cable. And I got to figure out how I'm going to do that, but I believe I'm going to try to get a lead wire attached to this and use it as a fish. So pull this one back through the other way, and then hopefully be able to use the same pathway to pull the other one in. So what we got going on here is that the speedometer cable is pretty thick cable. It's got like an expanded metal cable, like a twisted cable that runs through this bigger insulated cable, and that's constantly spinning while the car is driving. And that spinning is what relates to the old school analog dash and the speedometer and the odometer. The spinning is translated by the odometer based on the gearing that's in the transmission. So it figures out by the revolutions how fast you're going, how far you're going. We don't need that anymore. So the system that this uses is all digital. So it's just an electric cable, just wires that are going to run up from the transmission through to here. So I need to run a new wire and take this old speedometer cable out of here. The trick is, it sort of runs through the firewall. So if I want to make it easy for myself to pull the new one back in, I really need to set myself up with a fish. So I've got some baling wire here because I think it's going to be tough enough and flexible enough to make this work. If it doesn't work, you know, well, you guys will just make fun of me and it'll be more content. But what I'm going to try to do here is just twist this around the speedometer cable. All right, so we've twisted it around. Let's see if this is going to work. I think we might throw a scrap of tape around that too, just to be extra safe. What I don't know is how easy it's going to be to pull the speedometer cable back through, because it is pretty beefy. I'm going to have to get in there. Wow, that was shockingly easy. Shockingly easy. Alarming, actually. And I should have brought that cable with me. I didn't. All right, so if you haven't used a fish before, this is the way we're going to make this work. This cable, this baling wire, is now fed through the port that I need this new wire to follow. So we made an easy route just by attaching it to the old cable that was where we wanted it to go and yanking it back through. It's pulled this fish wire now through where we need it to be. So now all we'll have to do on this end is just attach this fish wire to the end of my cable here. And then once that's attached, you just feed it back up through. There's not a lot to bite onto here, so we'll use a lot of the electrical tape here to try to secure this one, but I don't suspect it'll be much of a problem. Sometimes you do have to worry when you're fishing stuff like this that the wire pulls off. This is especially the case if you get a lot of corners you're going through. We don't here. All right, here she comes. Bingo. There's our cable. We got it up there. All right, so that's it. Simple as it works with a fish. So we got this up here, now we just have to take the tape off. And our cable is run. So what I've got to do now is make sure that I get all of these clips that I'm not going to be using secured back into the harness. I just don't want these things sitting out there. I don't want any loose wires disconnected, just hanging out, ready to ground out on something. So we'll get them all into this harness, and then we'll just tape off the harness. Well, as I feared, this is probably going to be a two-parter. But the heavy lifting part one is done. So we have the dash gauges in, we're in place, and we are set up, and it looks pretty good. It's a natural look to the cars. Doesn't really look like the original, but it looks natural, and it should look great once we get this thing hooked up to a power source and we're moving. I may try to do that at some point, as long as I can be sure that I'm not going to fry anything. And you can see from here, we've got our cables running in the back there. And I basically just roughly grouped all those wires together to run through here underneath the speaker and dump over here. So right on top of the glove box is where I'm going to be placing the VHX box. That is, hold on, it's this guy. So this is the VHX guy, and we are going to be placing him right around here, right on top of the dashboard, or the glove box. How I'm going to mount that down, I haven't decided yet. There are some mounting tabs here. So we're going to see what I end up doing. I may have something else cooking up. So this little VHX guy, this controller, needs to get mounted someplace. They give you pretty specific instructions on where not to mount it. They don't want it anywhere near the HEI system or any other sort of high energy output system because it can screw with the electronics. They want you to have drip rails in it, or drip lines, loops. for the wires, because they do not want this getting wet in any way, shape, or form. So I was real curious about where I was going to place this, and one of the videos that I looked at online where someone was installing this in a car, they put it right on top of the dashboard, or right on top of the glove box underneath the dash pad. And I thought, that's kind of perfect. It's a genius location to place this. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm probably going to double side tape this bad boy right down on top of that. I don't want to screw into the glove box. I don't want to ruin it from doing that. So more than likely, this will just be a double face tape deal right down onto it. I'll get an aggressive double face tape and slap that down on there, and this will be in its home. And that's what we have to do next. So my next role will be making sure that I'm finishing off the wiring connections here. So there's still a couple of connections I got to double check on. I do need constant power, and I need an accessory power. I have to make sure that I correctly identify those and get those lines run. Not too big a deal. I've got some grounds that I'm going to have to connect. So there's a bunch of feeds off of this box that all want to go to a common body ground. So I'm going to have to run a little bit of wire just to make sure that that can happen. That also should not be a big deal. So I'm leaving the dash undone for now. It's going to stay with the pad off of it, and it's going to stay unbolted until I can get this stuff all set up. And then hopefully in the midst of all the stuff we're doing to get the actual car running, to get the motor in next weekend, with any amount of luck, what we'll be able to do is once we get things like kicked over and started up, we'll be able to finalize all that wiring. So we're nearing a home stretch, and I'm feeling good about the way this thing sets up. I can't wait to see the way it looks when the lights come on, but I'm going to have to wait. So are you. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, keep throwing wrenches.